Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. 2 days ago, when my father was warded at National Heart Institute, IJN, I was waiting for afternoon prayer time in the surau at IJN. And there's a brief sermon, or perhaps what we Muslims call tazkirah. It's fashionable since 20 years ago, I think, or 30 years ago. This preacher, or this ustad stated that there's a thin line to distinguish a believer and a disbeliever in Islam, and it is actually prayers. One who does not perform complete prayers are actually disbelievers. And this is according to him. If one day we can establish an Islamic state here in Malaysia, according to Sunnism, in particular the Hanbali school of thought, one who does not perform complete prayers are disbelievers. And imagine, according to him, how many people in our residential area, neighborhoods, are actually disbelievers. And it made me think that how come this man is actually emphasizing this fiqh orientation, while we also have this component called ihsan, compassion. In Indonesia, it's attributed to Pak Haidar, Gerakan Ihsan, which emphasize rahmah, compassion, virtue, humility, goodness, and other stuffs. But here in Malaysia, many people knows me as a novelist. Once you're a novelist, you will be always subjected to, he writes novels, just like that. But I do research in history, sociology, and stuff, others in disciplines. And I was like thinking, why are we actually moving towards this violence and persecution? Like 2 years ago, I was invited to this college, actually producing priests or pastors. It's an evangelical college in Seremban, Stam, invited by Reverend Sivan Kit. And one of the pastor or priests there asked me, why are the Muslims actually, or Malay Muslims actually ignoring human rights violations that actually occurred now in our society? Why are there not many Muslims actually opposing these kind of human rights violations? It led me to read back the Malay annals or Sejarah Melayu. I don't know whether you realize or not that when Islam first set foot in Malaysia or in Malaya, it was a blend of legalistic and paganistic kind of Islam, what I called in my many essays as Islam Parameswara. The first encounter with Islam was for Raja Kecil Besar. He had this dream. He dreamt that Prophet Muhammad came to him and taught him how to say shahada, to profess as a Muslim. And according to Prophet Muhammad in his dream, tomorrow there will be a ship came from Jeddah, and this man, Said Abdul Aziz, will perform congregational prayer at the shore, on the beach. And you need to follow him as he's a Muslim. And this is a religion for you. And the Raja Kecil Besar told his bendahara, prime minister at the time, and the prime minister was actually quite excited and said that, okay, let's wait this ship to come to arrive. And apparently the ship came, and these people were also praying down there. And the king came with all the elephants, and the whole Malacca, I think, came out to have a look these congregational prayers. And of course, we read in the Malay annals, the king converted to Islam. And the first thing that the king taught, the first thing that the Muslim preacher Sidi Abdul Aziz taught at Raja Kecil Besar was actually how to perform prayer. So from here, we know that this is an impression that Islam, this Malay kind of Islam, was nothing actually theological. So there's no theological lessons, and surely it won't lead to doctrine of justice. So having jurisprudential impression of Islam permitted to the people without knowing the basic foundation of religion. And this is a grave error. And since that, we have this fake orientation kind of Islam, and it's blended with many other syncretized with local traditions and many other aspects. As I mentioned, that became legalistic, paganistic kind of Islam. This is why we have, if we read Malay annals, how Sultan Mahmud, for instance, dictate Hang Tuah to kidnap, to abduct Tun Tija, the fiancée of, I think, one of the prince of Pahang, and also dictate Hang Tuah or his warriors to kill the whole clan of Tun Fatimah. And at night, after forcing Tun Fatimah to marry him, at night he went to study tasawwuf. This is really something I think quite awkward for me. When I first read it, I said, okay, he killed people in the morning, and at night he take tasawwuf lessons, Islamic lessons. So this is kind of Islam when it first set foot in Malaysia in particular. Of course, we have different kinds of orientation in Java, where Wali Songo and stuff and other figures actually, Javanese Sufism or Islam Kejawen. So it's really quite different in Indonesia compared to Malaysia. So this ground gives a good ground for actually violence and persecution to arrive here in Malaysia. So when Wahhabism arrived in Malay world around 1803 in Sumatra, in particular in Minangkabau, we see that this phenomena, violence and persecution, have been welcomed by the people, especially people in that particular area, Minangkabau, and then there are a few figures actually migrated to the Malay Peninsula, including Seremban. So when Stamford Raffles became resident, so Lieutenant Governor of British Java in Bencoolen, or Bangkahulu, I think, first impression of Islam was actually very positive. He said this is a civilized kind of a religion. We need to respect the religion. But when this small conflict occurs, attributed to three newly pilgrims actually coming back from Hajj at the time, and these three people, Haji Miskin, the leader among these three actually, they started this conflict by trying to cleanse the society from innovations and from the local traditions, especially in Minangkabau. And this led to a small war, what we called in Malay history as Perang Padri. Yeah, Perang Padri. Although there are many people also contest that Haji Miskins and his friends are not really the Wahhabis actually, although that I do believe that he has he gets influenced by the Wahhabist movement during that era. This is a first violence and persecution in the name of religion, in the name of Islam in Minangkabau. And if we try to compare the situation with current situation, we can see that actually the Padris, they go to the villages and kill people because they don't follow their code of conduct. Even Tuanku Nanrenche, one of the three pilgrims, actually killed his own maternal aunt. Because this is Minangkabau, it's adat pepatih. So killing maternal aunt is a huge thing conducted by this guy in the name of religion, because they are opposing also adat pepatih. Yeah? And there's a lot of bloodshed. And one of the disciples of these pilgrims in exile, and he ran away to Negeri Sembilan and passed away in Seremban. So it's not only nowadays that we see people running away from his or her own country, coming to Malaysia to seek permanent residence, yeah, in a way. And since that, yeah, we can see how the Malay world have changed dramatically, because in a way, violence and persecution in the name of religions are tolerated. And when Yam Tuan Muda Ali became the leader of Riau at a time, in 17-something or 18-something, I can't remember the exact year, he actually introduced the Salafization of Sunni Islam in Riau, in particular Riau Johor, Melayu Riau, Kerajaan Riau Johor. And if we read in Tufat al-Nafis, translation by Virginia Matheson, for example, we can see that Yam Tuan Ali Muda was anti-entertainment, for example. He banned and prohibited the Majlis of Pantun, and he asked his troops or soldiers to actually spying houses that does not perform morning prayers, and also banning the socialization of girls and boys in Riau and Melayu area region that he governed. And he was very much supported by Muslim scholars at the time, including Raja Ali Haji, a very famous figure that the Islamists here in Malaysia will refer to him as a father of a modern Malay literature, etc., etc. So these are the incidents that allows violence and persecution in the name of religion in Malay society. And when Muhammad Abdul Wahab and later his sons and his troops, his followers, raided Medina, raided Najaf, raided Karbala in Iraq, and thank you. When Wahhabism established in Saudi Arabia in 1924 with the fall of Ottoman, right after the collapse of Ottoman Empire, I think most Muslim countries are very careful in a way how to work with the newly instated Saudi Arabia at the time. But for Malaya, not only in few months after the fall of Ottoman Empire, Malaya actually, or the Malay pilgrims actually has established very good communication with the monarch at the time. Yeah? For instance, the collapse of Ottoman Empire is in 1924. In 1925, total defeat of Sharif Ali in Mecca. In 1927, early 1927, there are already almost 12,000 Malay pilgrims in Mecca at a time during the Hajj season. But if you compare to the other Muslim countries, they are very careful, yeah, sending their pilgrims to Saudi at the time. And in few years after that, in 1939, the Saudi grants the Malay society to have a small house or school or hostel in Saudi Arabia named Darul Ulum. This follows in the 1920s when few Saudi scholars visited northern state of Malay Peninsula, Perlis. Yeah? Among others, the famous Saudi visitors are Sheikh Hassan and Sheikh Nur al-Surur, or locally known in Perlis as Tuan Guru Haji Ismail Haji Muhammad. And he is obviously, genuinely, actually came from a Wahhabi learning institution, Dar al-Hadith in Medina. And they start teaching regular lessons in Perlis and disguising, spreading Wahhabism in the name of Ahlus Sunnah Perlis. And strengthened by the state officials by, among others, Haji Mat Hakim, Sheikh Ahmad Muhammad Hashim, Wan Ahmad Wan Daud, Abu Bakr al-Ashari. All these are in historical accounts. And of course, as historian, I cannot make all this up. And following that, in the 1970s, we have what we called the rise of Petro-Islam. Yeah? Because we know in the 1970s there are three defining incidents: the fall of Shah and the establishment of Republic Islam of Iran, and the aggression against Afghanistan by the Soviet Union, and the oil crisis attributed to King Faizal at the time. And Also, almost at the same time, Anwar Sadat is actually promoting pan-Arabism in Egypt. And Saudi, as a regional power, is actually competing with Egypt at the time and trying to promote what King Faisal called pan-Islamism. And when Egypt carelessly chasing out most of the Muslim Brotherhood's activists, many of them went to Saudi Arabia, among others Muhammad Qutb, the brother of Said Qutb, became a famous lecturer in Saudi Arabia, and among his famous students was Osama bin Laden. This started, the incident create the syncretism of between the Islamic movement, the Islamist political Islam, and this newly designed Wahhabism that are now branded as Salafism by Nasruddin al-Albani in Jordan. And there's one thesis actually done by Fauzi Zakaria referring that how PAS, Islamic Party of, in Malaysia here, has a very early contact with Muslim Brotherhood in the 1950s. And among others, Yusuf Rawa and Zulkifli Yaqub, if I'm not mistaken, already took lessons or have this small halaqah or group with Hassan al-Banna himself. And these all incidents created how Salafism or Wahhabism very much rooted in Malay society or in Malaysia right now. This is important to understand because there are also, coming back to the preacher in National Heart Institute, before he started stating his fatwa that according to Hanbali school of thought, one who doesn't pray completely is a disbeliever. I was listening to him. I thought he's quite progressive because he was stating that if a non-Muslim doesn't get any direct contact about Islam, doesn't learn Islam, at the time, long before there's no Google whatsoever, no Facebook, no social media, of course God won't send them to hell because it won't be fair to them. So I think this is quite progressive. And he even mentioned that the Eskimos, for example, there are no prophet sent by God to this society, Eskimo, in Alaska, according to him. So I said, okay, this, perhaps I want to give my card to him. I said, oh, let's discuss. But perhaps he saw me praying there and said, Faisal Tirani. So he started complaining about other stuffs. And apparently, because of course, he's also started to make takfiri in Shias. And so it's escalate, I mean, the persecution suddenly. What I'm trying to say is that we need to understand that there are also many progressive figures who are actually closeted Salafis, who are actually using this methodology because the science of takfiri, as Pa Haidar stated earlier, is this discipline is very much underdeveloped here in Malaysia. Not many people really understand. So that's why people are kept getting, borrowing Prophet Said Farid Alata's term, getting fooled by these closeted Salafis. So it's really needed for us to understand the complexity and the root of this phenomena, what we call today as violence and persecution in the name of religion. Just like Haidar, actually I have a lot of material. I've written a very long paper for NUS actually, or ICS, Yusuf Isa Institute, 50 pages. But I'm not going to reveal all here. So maybe we can share it in discussion, and it's better for me to give this slot to Professor Chandra Muzaffar, which actually a very renowned figure himself. Yeah.